that being very nasty towards me.
Yeah.
So I'm sure I wouldn't have accepted the way my father lived, and I would have wanted to break away from that. And
yeah, it would have been natural to rebel, and you might end up in gangs or anything.
Yeah. So I shudder sometimes to think what would have happened to me if I had continued to live there.
Yeah. And, we do know, too, that the ashram was burned later, wasn't it?
Yeah.
But that was many years later, wasn't it?
Yeah, that was burnt in 1985.
So that would have been long after you had been out of there anyway.
Yeah.
But so when you went to India, were you still defiant, so to speak, whenever you first went to live with your grandfather?
I was still defiant.
Were you still angry?
I was, when I went to live with grandfather, I was still very angry.
Yeah, that's what I mean.
But having lived with grandfather, and he taught me about how to deal with that anger. And then I began to understand what he was saying. Mm-hmm. And so,
that was a very important time in your life then.
Yeah. And he taught me also that he said, if you really feel so angry about what's happening and the discrimination and all that, then why don't you do something to change that?
Yeah.
And so I thought that was a good suggestion, that I should use my life to bring about a change and make people aware that this kind of prejudice is not right.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think that's how I've gotten into the work that I'm doing now.
Well, how many years did you live with your grandfather?
I was with him for about 18 months.
Oh, it wasn't very, very long, but it was enough to make a difference.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, it was enough to make a difference in my life.
Uh-huh. Well, you weren't...
this is something very strange. You can be with a person for one day and it can affect you, or you can live with that person your whole life and not be affected. Mm-hmm. So...
well, look at what happened to your grandfather just on that one night on the train. Just one thing can make a big difference.
Yeah. One night on the train made a difference to his life.
And the 18 months with your grandfather helped you to mold your entire life after that.
Yeah.
So it was important. But you weren't with him whenever he was assassinated. You weren't living there at that time.
No, we had just gone back to South Africa.
So you went back to the ashram.
We had been in India for almost 2 years.
Uh-huh.
And the ashram and the weekly paper and all that was left in the charge of a friend, and he was getting impatient and wanted to go back and do his own, pursue his own life. And so he wrote to my father and said, I'm going back now. You better come here and take over.
Yeah.
So by November of 1947, just after India became independent.
Oh, that was when it happened.
Yeah, India became independent on the 15th of August, 1947. So after that, we all went back to South Africa. And grandfather was assassinated 2 months later.
That's what I was thinking. It was in 1948, wasn't it?
Yeah, 30th of January, 1948.
Uh-huh. So it was right after you had left then.
Yeah. And that was quite a shock to us.
Mm-hmm. But as you write the book and everything, you look back on it, do you think he accomplished everything that he could have accomplished in life?
I don't think he had accomplished everything that he wanted to accomplish. Whenever we would talk about this during his life, he would say he wanted to live for 125 years because he had so much to do, and he would need 125 years to accomplish all that.
But if you look at it with history, he was there during the most earth-changing things, I guess you would call it.
Right.
So it might have been time for him to leave.
Yeah.
Whenever you look at history from a bigger picture.
Right.
But I know there was a lot later that there was a lot of problems in that part of the world that I don't know if he could have helped it or not. It's hard to say. The things that happened
difficult.
later.
I think, the whole tragedy was that the Indian government, the Indian leadership that took over the government of India, they decided to abandon his philosophy and abandon the advice he had given for India's development and the way they should go about it. And they chose to use the Western model of development and capital-intensive development and so on. And so they didn't accept any part of his philosophy at all. And so we face all these problems. He was against, for instance, the division of the country.
Yeah.
He didn't want India to be divided into India and Pakistan.
Yeah.
He said everybody, has a right to this country, whether they are Hindus or Muslims. They were born here, and this is their country, and the country doesn't need to be divided.
Yeah, and it's been having problems ever since.
Yeah, and these politicians, they were so impatient to get into seats of power that they ignored his advice and they went and accepted partition from the British. And the consequence of that is that we're suffering still 60 years after the event.
Yes, it's still having problems over there, and they're sitting on the edge of nuclear war.
Right.
It just keeps getting worse.
India would have been a very different country today if they had followed Gandhi's advice.
But, we always have free will. That's the problem.
Yeah, that's the problem.
Well, let's talk about you then. When you decided then you were going to, follow your grandfather's way of thinking?
Well, not entirely, but I
tell about what happened to you then, what put you on your path.
Well, as you said, there comes a crossroads in everybody's life.
Yes.
And the crossroad, my first crossroad came around in when my father died in 1956, and some of his friends insisted that he should be given the honor of his ashes should be taken to India and immersed there with honor and dignity and so on.
Yeah.
And my mother, because of our financial condition, wasn't very keen on doing this immediately. She said she would keep his ashes, and whenever we went to India, she would take them and have them immersed.
Yeah.
But these friends were insistent that it should happen immediately, not wait, we should not wait. And so they agreed to pay for my travel to India and perform these last rites.
Uh-huh.
And that's how I happened to go to India. And having gone to India, I took the opportunity to stay there a little longer to meet with the family and discuss with them my future. And in the meantime, I had a severe attack of appendicitis and had to be operated. And that's where I met my wife. She was my nurse and fell in love and decided to marry her.
You wouldn't think that appendicitis would lead to something like that.
Right. And there, then I was faced with the problem because the South African government said that I can come back alone, but not with her. They were not willing to give her an entry visa.
Ah.
And so, I wasn't going to leave her and walk away. So I decided to give up South Africa and live in India. And so that was the first turn in my life, a major turn. And then living in India, where I had to find a job and earn money and raise a family and so on, and so that took me in another direction. And then I saw the problems of the untouchables, the low caste people, who were being oppressed in India in the same way that I was oppressed in South Africa. And so I decided with my wife and some friends to get involved in trying to solve this problem. And
it's a big problem, though.
Sorry?
It's a big problem.
It's a big problem, yeah. But we decided to do whatever we could to bring about a change.
Mm-hmm.
And so we, on a small scale, we started programs which are now going on their own momentum.
Yes, I believe everything takes on a life of its own once you put energy into it.
Yeah, it again depends. You see, if you empower the people, a lot of times we do charity, but we don't empower the people, and so the people, they struggle and are not able to stand on their own feet, and so we have to feed charity, all the time.
Yeah, they don't know how to take care of themselves.
So what we did with them was we decided that we were not going to give them charity in that sense, but that we were going to make them work for everything that they needed.
Yeah.
And, first of all, we had to establish them economically before we could talk to them about culture and other things, because they came from such tremendous poverty. Mm-hmm. So we started economic programs, we empowered them, we rebuilt their self-respect and self-confidence, and trained them, and so once they became trained and confident in taking care of their affairs, we handed over everything to them, and they then started working on their own, and we were relieved of the responsibility.
Well,
so now they are expanding on their own.
Why did you decide to come to the United States? Whenever you first came here and decided to set up your organization?
Yeah.
Why did you decide to come here?
Well, that was the second turn in my life, the second crossroads that I came to.
Oh, okay. You had been here before?
No, I had never been here before.
Oh, okay.
I was, as I said, we were working in India, and we had these programs going, and those programs received some wide publicity, and a lot of friends in foreign countries came to know about it. And so we started getting visitors from the United States. And we had one visitor from Vicksburg in Mississippi, and she came and she wanted to see our program, and after showing her everything, she invited Sunanda and me to come and have dinner with her at a hotel.
Yeah.
And there we were chatting over dinner and talking about discrimination and so on. And it suddenly came into my mind, even as we were talking, that one should do a comparative study of the three types of prejudices that I had suffered. The